Hey YouTubers, I just thought I'd touch base with you about that National Defense Authorization Bill and the anti-piracy bill that's going to put a lot of controls on the internet. This is one of these situations where the very nature of the citizenry and the very nature of the government works kind of in our advantage. Now, what I mean by that is, okay, I'm sure that everybody here has gone online or gone to YouTube, for example, and then it says this video is not available in your country, right? Well, that's generally a result of either government or corporate influence closing down the flow of information, right? Now, with this new legislation, things like that are going to become more common. And it's going to also apply to other websites and whatnot. And there's probably going to be situations where there's going to be websites in other countries where Americans will then be surfing to like leave comments and talk about how screwed up our government is, because pretty soon it will be illegal to do that in the U.S. And when they do that, 90% of people will try to get to that website and they won't be able to because it'll be blocked. Now, the only way they can block a website, a foreign website from the US, is by pulling the little translation out of the network address translation computers. Now, what those are, have you ever had your internet service cut off or interrupted, and then you try to search or try to surf up a website, Google or whatever, and it just on the bottom of your browser it says looking up whatever www.google.com, right? Now what's happening there is your browser's attempting to contact the NAT server, and then the NAT server will then turn that google.com into a series of, I think it's 4 3-digit numbers, right? And then your computer and the network can understand those little groups of numbers. Then it sends you off to the website, right? But if they want to block access to those websites, the easiest way is to pull it out of the network address translation servers. So then if you happen to get the actual translation by the numbers, say if it's posted on a news group or something, well then you would be able to plug it into your browser manually and surf there, right? And then there's another situation where they could have all the little nodes block that particular web address or that IP address. I think they can do that. I'm a diesel mechanic, not a computer guy. But anyway, if they do that, then basically that would stop 90% of people from being able to surf up those websites, right? But you, of course, are smarter than that. There are several ways for you to access that information, and I'd like to cover those right now. Basically, there are several ways of doing it. I'm going to cover maybe 2. One of my favorite ways is to get a proxy server, right? And then basically they call it a tunneling proxy server. And then basically what it does is it connects to several or hundreds of people who are surfing through the proxy for any number of reasons, right? So let's say this is you, right? But there are hundreds of IP connections to the proxy server. And then basically this is a highly encrypted data stream that it'll basically slow your speed down a little bit. But generally for anything we do, like YouTube or news groups or whatever, you basically, that's plenty, right? Then basically it goes through the proxy, and then it pops out, and then the proxy if basically surfs to wherever that you wanted to surf to, right? And then the information comes to the proxy server, and then it's hard for the feds or whatever to track, because it could be this unencrypted data stream here could be going to any one of these hundreds of or thousands of people who are hooked up to it. And it gets even better than that, because most of these proxy servers have many different nodes throughout the world, right? And most of them are located in places where freedom is a pretty big thing, right? Well, there's the proxy server I use, for example, has many different places, 7 or 8 places to choose from throughout the country, and you can actually surf as if you're in another country, right? So imagine if your local proxy or your local NAT, your unencrypted web address, this is your ISP, right? Imagine if it has the proxies, the NAT servers, as if it has that thing, this website here blocked, right? Well, basically, it can. You can then, instead, you can surf through another country to that website that you wanted to surf from, and basically, if this proxy is in like a place where it's like restricted, like maybe what the U.S. will be in maybe a year or so, but basically, then you can just surf right around it and go straight to that website and complain all about the government all you want. Now, that is, and there is possibilities that companies like this could get closed down, but well, then there are other ways. Now, another way, which is slower, so personally I prefer the proxy method right now. For example, you can actually watch BBC's TV shows and whatnot if you surf as if you're in England, right? But anyway, there is another program or another piece of software, another network, which is free and open source. And what it is called the I2P network. And that's a peer-to-peer network of a bunch of people just like you who have PCs, right, that are just sitting on their desk, and they go off to work or whatever, and the network is still running, right? And these computers are all plugged to maybe, say, 7 or 8, 9, 10 other computers, right? And basically it's a direct connection, but this data stream is highly encrypted, just as encrypted as your tunneling proxy server, right? Now, what happens is and basically it creates these hosted on each individual machine are websites and services and mail servers and news groups and just about anything that the regular internet provides. Or when I was surfing the other day, I was really struck by how much it resembled the internet before corporations took it over and made it all commercialized, right? It's just individual people saying whatever they want to say, right? And the thing is, and basically this is all hosted on each individual machine, right? But the problem is, if one machine has a particular website or something and then it goes down, nobody can access that particular website, right? Unless somebody mirrors it deliberately, but even then, how can you find the mirror? But let's say, and then basically they're connected, say, now the group is, the whole network is just this humongous splat of massive numbers of machines. But let's just look at one circuit, right? So basically, this guy over here has a website that you want to check out, right? And what happens is it basically has the thing, and your computer then sends out a request for that information. It's like in this gigantic key file. It's like 60 or 70 letters or characters long. and then it sends a request out for it, and it goes throughout the network, right? And it bounces through all of these machines, right? And then it finds a way. Then basically it finds a way there, and then basically this website here then sends the information, the web page or whatever, and then it can jump through many different highly encrypted loops or jumps or whatever, and then eventually it reaches your own machine. But these machines in the middle, they don't know anything about what's going through because the circuit is highly encrypted, and it's hard for, say, the feds or whatever to insert nodes into the network, because how can it determine what, if there's like seditious anti-government material, how can it possibly determine what is seditious and what is not? Their best bet is probably to insert into the network and then start cutting the network unexpectedly and make the network slow down. That would be one way of doing it. But I'm not an expert on this. I'm a pretty good diesel mechanic, not a super duper computer guy. Now, there's an advantage to the I2P network as well, because there's a service that allows you to dive into the I2P network and pop out in a random place somewhere through somebody's internet connection, and then you can basically surf up a any kind of whatever, any kind of anti-government, we should all protest here or there type of website, right? Now, what I do is I actually hook up my proxy to the I2P network, and then if anybody wants to pop out and like maybe surf up some kind of illegal shit on my computer's server, then of course it goes through the proxy. It's an anonymizing proxy, so it doesn't really matter. But in any case, that is a pretty cool system. Now, there's another system which I think it's even cooler, and that is, I haven't been on this network, and the network I think has grown, but it's called Freenet, and what that is it's also just like this. It's all hooked together in much the same way, but it all hosts a collective internet or a collective database of web pages or whatever, right? And what happens then is if you have a node, right, and you decide to publish a website or a web page, you can actually take the web page and upload it to your own highly encrypted section of your hard drive, and you have no idea what's on that highly encrypted section right there. And basically it has many, many different things on it, and if somebody wants to surf up that particular web page that you just uploaded to Freenet, they will send out a request for it, and then it'll bounce through many different places, and then eventually the web page will be sent back, right? And it goes through each node, right? And if I understand correctly, basically each node has its own little section, right? Its own little collective network. And then basically if your machine is then compromised or drops out or something, that if the file has been popular and has been moved around a lot, it'll retain, or it'll obtain something like immortality on the network. And if it's like really like obscure, like how to plant lettuce seeds or something, and nobody's interested in it on the network, right? Then of course it will eventually drop out. Now, the advantage of that is that of course it's not dependent on each individual node. A node could drop out, and then the information, if it's good information, will then be surfed up, right? Now, another cool thing about both the I2P and I think Freenet is that if you upload something in a in a into the network, right? It has your hash number associated with it, so it's very difficult for somebody to pretend to be you because their hash number on their machine would be different. Now, I don't know how that works because I'm a really good diesel mechanic, but I'm not the greatest computer guy. But anyway, I know that Tor is another network similar to this. You got Tor, you got Freenet, and you've got I2P. I think Tor has a way of surfing through the Tor network to other countries or whatever, and then you can bypass local internet throttling and internet blockages and whatnot. But I'm not really sure because I've never been on Tor. So basically, as our society closes down and becomes less free, basically we're going to have to come up with other ways of getting the information that we want, and it's also going to be important to be able to sort of go gray or anonymize yourself. Now, some of us who are on YouTube and have surfed around here for quite a while, they will still know who we are, right? But and of course our channels might be pulled, or we might have to pull our own channels. But if that happens, it's wise to have a backup, shall we say, sort of a lifeboat, so that even if like suddenly there's like this giant coup that wipes out the whole American access to the internet or something, it would be wise to have an identity or some kind of foothold in the I2P or Tor or Freenet or something, so that you'll be able to get news or information, because a lot of us are in law enforcement and in military and whatnot, and they would be able to do things like warning those of us in their network if there's going to be a giant goon squad coming down in your neighborhood or whatever, and it might be handy to know about that sort of thing. Now, also in the military, I spent some time in the military, hated it, but anyway, if people in the military are told to do some things that they really are not comfortable with doing, they have a way of not doing it, and that is to be so incompetent, to pretend to be so completely clueless that the supervisor has to like be right there telling him, now, okay, go in there or do this, and then they would say, and then they do it, and then it's like, well, what do we do next? And that is a way of slowing things down. And when you're treated unfairly in the military, and a lot of people are, I sure was, it's your only way to resist without being able to actually resist or actually protest. You can say, I'm doing the best I can, I'm just not very smart. And I did that a little bit myself. So basically, yeah, so government is like a giant organism, and it moves. It's really big, very powerful, and kind of slow, and it's fairly easy for an anonymous person, not anonymous, but somebody who isn't really well known, to sort of like maneuver around the restrictions and the problems that the government creates without being noticed. So so that's, be like sneaky, be like unnoticeable, be unremarkable, and you can get basically around and avoid some of the
bullshit that's coming our way. Let me see. Okay, well, that's about it. I'm wondering, I don't want anybody who is on I2P to really say in my comments that they are on I2P. It's just the less people or the authorities or whatever know about people who are on I2P, the better. So just don't even say anything if you are. Now me, I'm just a single guy, no family to worry about, so I can afford to be a little bit more reckless than a lot of people. So there you are. So later.